Let's talk about STEM. For those that don't know what that means, science, technology, engineering, and math. The
I like STEAM.
STEAM?
Yeah, I like to throw art in there too. Be creative.
Okay. So, especially in, a lot of Canadian cities like Vancouver, for example, there are a lot of tech companies, a lot of programmers, video game companies. But is it easy for women to break into these industries? Well, studies have shown that typically that's not the case. It's predominantly a male-dominated industry. Obviously, we're trying to close that gender gap in many ways. Well, we're going to talk with an interesting guest. Her name is Allison Wynn. She's a research associate at Stanford's VMware Women's Leadership Innovation Lab, and they did a study basically going to 84 recruiting sessions at elite West Coast universities to see if they were connecting with women or not. Thanks for joining us, Allison.
Sure. Thank you for having me.
So your group went to 84 recruiting sessions, which must have been a lot of fun. Were they reaching women? What was your overall...
They were not as effectively as they could have been. So they often had a few different things that research has shown really deter women and really a lot of different people. So these are things like lacking role models, lacking diverse role models. It was mostly white men doing the presenting. And even when women were present in the sessions, they often weren't doing the content presenting. So women might be there setting up the food or handing out the T-shirts, but they weren't presenting the core technical content, which really sends a signal to students about what kinds of people succeed at these companies. But then there were also sort of more shocking examples of things that were inappropriate or might deter women from being interested in your company. Things like showing pornography and prostitution references on your slides or in your content, kind of making offhand jokes that were really inappropriate and could signal to women that they're not going to be, safe and included at your company.
Prostitution and pornography references? Are you kidding me?
I hope I'm allowed to say these things on the radio.
Yeah, yes. Of course you are. Of course you are. But I find that crazy, especially in today's society and culture.
It was really shocking. And the funny thing about it is I've presented this work to tech companies before, and often the response is sort of, wow, like, there's no way my company would be doing something that egregious at our session. And oftentimes what happens is then those people go back to their companies, sit through their recruiting sessions. I have an example of one company I'm not allowed to name, but this is exactly what happened there. Their change agent who we were presenting this to went back to their company and found that they actually had a pornography reference in their recruiting sessions that she hadn't even noticed before. So I think sometimes, these are offhand jokes or things that are intended to try to connect with students, intended to be funny, intended to be entertaining. But, the companies don't realize that these things are happening in their recruiting sessions.
Do you think that might also be an age thing as well, where some of the people might be older and not quite get the fact that this isn't cool anymore? Or does it not affect age at all with the type of people that are presenting these types of like you said, signals to people that maybe this isn't a place for you?
I don't think it's an age thing, because we also saw a lot of, young startup founders who were doing this too, kind of fresh out of college, trying to connect. They often painted what we reference in the study sort of a fraternity-like culture, saying, oh, you can come here and we have beer fridges and we play beer pong all the time. And it's so much like college, So I think, youth was also woven into it just the same way. So I think, it wasn't necessarily just an age thing.
Did you get a sense, at these recruiting sessions for these American universities, in the audience, was it still predominantly men, or was there a good mix of male, female?
There was a good mix. So I think it was, the average was around 20%. I'd have to go back and look at the paper at the exact number, but so there was definitely fewer women because these were mostly electrical engineering and computer science majors, although some other majors were represented too. But that ranged from no women in one session to, I think one session had 74% women, which was actually a majority. So the sessions themselves really had a range.
So why are they still, recruiting in this fashion. You'd think that the message that we do need to be more inclusive of all races, religions, and of course sexes as well. Is it just so ingrained in the technology industry that it's kind of more of a male dominated side?
Yeah, I think it's ingrained. I think a lot of the times companies just don't know the best way to reach out. So as I said, I think a lot of the sort of inappropriate behaviors were made in an attempt to try to connect with the audience and try to, paint yourself as a fun company, a company where people want to work, and they don't realize that they're actually painting a very narrow picture of, or only appealing to a very narrow audience of what might be a fun workplace. So I think it's a lack of understanding of how to reach out to a broader audience. Because when I talk to tech companies, there's a lot of interest in recruiting a broad audience, the best candidates. They really do want to reach a diverse audience. And so I think it's just a matter of not understanding what the best way, how do I seem like a fun company that's going to be relatable to a broad audience?
When you finally looked at all the results from this study, were you or your team surprised?
We were. I know it sounds maybe sort of funny because we're gender researchers, so you would think nothing surprises us. But when I first set out to do this study, I remember I pitched the idea to my advisor, and she said, well, I just don't know that you're going to find very much. I mean, these are hour-long recruiting sessions. These are going to be the most sanitized, vetted. HR is going to be looking over all the content. Even if the company itself doesn't have a great culture, these sessions are probably going to be you're just like all diversity, all the time and all egregious behaviors removed. So we were pretty surprised when we went to these sessions and saw these really obviously egregious behaviors because we were not actually expecting that. So I think it's really a testament to how little attention is being paid to what's actually in the content of these sessions.
So I'm assuming that you probably gave this information to the companies. Has there been any response?
There's been a great response. There's been a lot of interest. I've had the chance to present this work to recruiting teams at companies and sort of outline what they should be doing differently and how to improve the sessions to welcome a diverse audience. And there's been a real great response to this and a lot of interest. So I'm hopeful that things will change for the better.
We're talking with Allison Wynn. She is a research associate at Stanford's VMware Women's Leadership Innovation Lab. There's a great article on Fast Company by Lizzie Hill that went through a lot of this. I recommend you check it out. Allison, thanks for joining us, and good job on the great work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.